It's a Heidel minicast. And now, Scott Clark.
For today's Heidelcast, I want to talk to you about J. Gresham Machen's Christianity and Liberalism. In February of 1923, this volume was published, and so, of course, we just celebrated the 100th anniversary of this very important volume, published by Macmillan in New York in 1923. Christianity and Liberalism by J. Gresham, which is a family name, Machen. And if the Heidelcast helps you, won't you help us keep it going? You can make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link on the Heidel blog or by mailing a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027. Time he published this, he was assistant professor of New Testament literature and exegesis in Princeton Theological Seminary. And of course, as you know, he went on to found Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, and that would be 1929, and then he is the founder of the Orthodox Presbyterian Church in 1936. Machen was, as I say, professor at Princeton, and this was one of the more important volumes published by any American religious author in the first half of the 20th century. It was a stirring and cogent defense of the thesis that biblical, historic, confessional Christianity is one religion and theological liberalism, distinct from political liberalism, is another. This book is, I think, as relevant today as the day it first appeared in 1923. He published other major academic works, among them The Origin of Paul's Religion and The Virgin Birth of Christ. He also published a number of radio talks, collections of radio talks that he gave in the early days of radio on station WIP in Philadelphia. He was the preeminent defender of Orthodox, evangelical in the old-fashioned sense of that word, Protestant Christianity in the first half of the 20th century. He left his post at Princeton in 1929 to protest a takeover of the seminary by both liberals, theological liberals, and doctrinally indifferent evangelicals. And in that year, he founded Westminster Theological Seminary. In 1936, he led a separation from the mainline liberal Presbyterian Church in the USA, PCUSA, after they defrocked him, after a kangaroo trial or a kangaroo court. They defrocked him for his leadership of a conservative, non-denominational, trans-denominational missions board. That year, he and others founded the denomination now known as the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. Why is Christianity and Liberalism a volume that you should read and a volume in which you should be interested? Just by way of background and introduction, I'd like to say that we are in a period very much like the 1920s, the period in which, of course, Machen published Christianity and Liberalism. His book, as I say, I think has as much value today as it did then. In fact, it's one of those volumes that, and I'm not the only one who says this, but many others have said this to me as well, that when they read it, it was like Machen was looking over their shoulder, or they were looking over Machen's shoulder. It's still remarkably relevant for a 100-year-old book. We're in a situation that's somewhat similar to his. We're in the midst of a post-industrial revolution. He was in the middle of an industrial revolution. We are in a post-war setting. He wrote this in the wake of World War I. There were a lot of young people in his generation who thought that Christianity was sort of irrelevant, at least traditional Christianity, and they wanted to fix the world now. And so they were embracing the social gospel, and we'll talk about that in another episode. But it will help you to understand the book a little bit if you think about what's happening around him as he published the book. Urbanization, industrialization. So people are moving away from the country and into cities. and jobs are moving into factories, and people's lives in some ways are becoming more regimented. And Machen came from a southern rural culture, a more rural culture, not to say the country exactly. The Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk in 1903, so flight is brand new. World War I was from 1914 to 1918, and so the whole world is reeling from the enormous catastrophe of World War I. The Wilson administration from 1913 to 1921 had basically, arguably anyway, set aside the Constitution in significant ways and signaled a loss of confidence in the founding of the American Republic. In this period, a lot of the ideas that we associate with the Enlightenment really began to hit home. They were no longer theoretical, they were no longer academic, they were being implemented in the government, in schools, and in other spheres of the culture. For example, in the reading and studying and understanding of the Bible. That period saw the rise of the higher criticism of Scripture and a loss of confidence in Scripture. And that, of course, served to undermine confidence in Scripture. Sin was being redefined away from transgression of the law of God or want of conformity to the law of God to mean other things. The supernatural was being called into question in a real way. The very idea of a need for salvation from the wrath to come was being called into question. And lots of Americans were adopting a new creed. And that was the modern creed. The universal brotherhood of man, the universal fatherhood of God, and human perfectibility. Well, those are just some of the factors that lie in the background of this important volume, from which we're going to be reading Christianity and Liberalism. And before I go, I'd like to ask two things from you. We do need your financial help to keep the Heidel blog and Heidelcast going. So if you are a listener and if you have benefited from what we're doing, please take a moment to make a donation by using PayPal, or you can write a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027. And one other thing you can do that's very easy, please go right now to Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star rating. We have lots of ratings, and we're doing very well according to Apple in Europe and in India and in China, but not so well in the United States. So I need American listeners particularly. Just go to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating so that others can find us.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by HeidelbergReformationAssociation.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.